911 said that he was broken into a house where all alone, please help us. Is somebody in the house now? I don't know, but I'm just alone, please help us.
Imagine that your house catches fire. Who do you call? Most of us don't even think twice about it. You grab your phone, you dial those 3 numbers, and help is on the way almost instantly. Regardless if that's the police department, fire, EMS, it's just that simple. It's become so automatic that we almost take it for granted. But it wasn't always that way. In fact, not long ago, in an analog world, in a time before, there wasn't a single emergency number in America. And depending on where you lived, you might not even know who to call. In this episode, we're going back to where it all began. Because before there were flashing lights, before there were sirens, there was a voice. Welcome to All In Always, the podcast where service, sacrifice, and leadership are more than stories. They're a way of life. I'm Chris Garcia, and every episode, we take a look behind the uniform to share the experiences, lessons, and moments that shaped a lifetime of service. Whether you're a veteran, first responder, currently serving, a family member, or someone who simply wants to better understand this life, I'm glad you're here. If these conversations mean something to you, follow the podcast, subscribe on YouTube, share this episode with somebody who would appreciate hearing it. Now, let's get into today's story. Imagine it's 1960. You're driving through another town, and you witness a terrible accident. Someone's hurt. Someone's calling out for help. You have to stop. It's just the right thing to do, but you need to help immediately. What do? You probably don't know the local police number. You're an out-of-towner. You don't know the fire department. You don't know if there's an ambulance service. And there's no time to be browsing a phone book. So you try the operator. They should know, right? Sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't. Some communities had only one emergency number, but others, they had several. Some required you to call the police first, while others expected you to call the hospital. And in the event of a medical emergency, of course, that would make sense. The first place your head goes to is you see ambulances parked at a hospital. You think hospitals dispatch ambulance. And of course, we know that that's not how it goes. But back in the day, maybe it did. Maybe you had to call the local hospital to get an ambulance dispatched out to you. You know, in the event of a medical emergency, it just made sense. But every city, every county, sometimes every agency did things differently. No standardized process, and frustratingly difficult to get a call out when every single second made the difference between life and death. So, during the 1960s, America became much more mobile. Families were traveling, interstates were expanding, and cities were growing. But guess what? Emergency communications hadn't kept up. But then, in 1967, a national study called Accidental Death and Disability, the Neglected Disease of Modern Society, exposed major shortcomings in emergency medical care across the country. It became known today as the White Paper and highlighted the need for faster, more confident, more coordinated emergency response. But one recommendation stood out more so than any other, and that was America's need for one emergency number. One number, anywhere, for everyone. Like most things we scratch our head about, it made sense. And we ask ourselves, why do we wait so long to figure these things out? Well, here's a fun fact. Why did we choose 911? Have you ever asked yourself that? I know I haven't. But for several reasons, they chose those 3 numbers. And number 1 was it's easy to remember. I mean, it's only 3 numbers. Quick to dial on a rotary phone, because if you remember, 9 was all the way at the bottom. You come all the way to the top to the 1. You're already at the 1, so you might as well stay there. And it's 2 short swings to the stop to the number 1. So probably the fastest number to dial back in the day. And not only that, they had to make sure it wasn't assigned as an area code anywhere, which it wasn't, and that it was compatible with existing telephone equipment. So making sure it was simple, making sure it was fast, but most importantly, universal. So the first 911 phone call was made on February 16th, 1968. It took place in Haleyville, Alabama. This is where history was made, with the very first call being placed by Alabama Speaker of the House, Rank and Fight, and it was answered by Congressman Tom Bevel. No emergency. It was just like when Alexander Graham Bell called his assistant, Thomas Watson, for the first time. It was for one purpose, just to prove the system worked. And today, millions of calls are made every year, and it all started with one phone, one town, one call. Now, the transition to the 911 number did not just happen overnight. Obviously, like everything else, it has to be implemented, and some things take time. So it gradually grew across America, and some communities were able to adopt it quickly, while others took years. Yes, years. And even worse, some took decades. By the 1980s, 911 was becoming the standard. But dispatchers still faced enormous challenges. They often didn't know exactly where the callers were. If somebody was panicking, they would accidentally disconnect. Finding them again wasn't as easy. You'd have to wait and hope that they were going to call back and maybe speak to the same dispatcher. And then we instituted the enhanced 911. This particular technology changed everything. So better known as E911, automatically displayed the caller's telephone number and address, making it much easier for dispatchers to relay information to whoever it was that they were dispatching. But suddenly they didn't have to, rely on frightened, panicked callers, because a lot of times it's hard to get through somebody to get information when they're crying and they're babbling. They don't know what to do. You can barely hear them. They might be muffled, or they might even be in a situation where they can't give you any information at all. But they could send help, even if somebody couldn't finish speaking. And for countless people, as I stated earlier, those extra seconds saved lives. Now, of course, when cell phones came into the picture, everything's changed again, right? At first, it created a brand new problem. People could call 911 from anywhere, but dispatchers often had no idea where they were. There wasn't triangulation back then, and nor did we have the time to do that. So information, once again, was key in order to be able to dispatch somebody to the emergency. So engineers had to develop a new way to estimate caller locations using cell towers, GPS, and device-based positioning. Today, many dispatch centers receive location information almost instantly, and tomorrow's systems will be even more accurate. So what does a dispatcher actually do? And this might surprise you. Dispatchers don't just answer phones. They're simultaneously talking to the callers, typing into CAD, listening to radios, dispatching responders, tracking units, monitoring multiple emergencies at once, updating officers as they approach the scene, updating the firefighters the same way as well as the paramedics. And they make all these split-second decisions, sometimes dozens of times every hour. The average person hears one conversation. The dispatcher is managing an entire incident. So I mentioned CAD, which is computer-aided dispatch, not to be confused with computer-aided drafting. This particular system made everything seamless. Basically, what it does is in real time shows a map, shows distance to emergency. It knows the minute a call comes in where that person is located. Even with a cell phone, it tells the dispatcher who is the closest in that area, whether it be a patrol car that happens to be close by, a fire department, if that's the case, What is the closest fire department? It'll tell them how long it will take them to get to the scene. It will give them updates on how far away they are, so the dispatcher can give that person that's having the worst day of their life as much comfort as they can, knowing that somebody is approaching and how much longer they have to wait, and even more. Now, 911 dispatchers, up until recently, have never really been looked at as a first responder. But when actuality, they are the first responder. People often think the first responder is whoever arrives first, but usually the very first responder is the dispatcher. They're already helping before anyone even turns on emergency lights. They could be talking someone through CPR, helping deliver babies. Keeping callers calm is probably a dispatcher's primary focus above all else. Just to be able to organize thoughts, to be able to calm somebody down so they're able to do the things that they might have to do before help arrives. Getting life-saving information to responders is 100% a part of the job. But they also provide updates while crews are still responding. And what is interesting and what I find very admirable is the fact that they may never meet the people that they help. And they're often the very first link in the chain of survival. So when we talk about unsung heroes, let's remember those 911 dispatchers. And with everything that has to do with first responders and military, we understand that there is a cost that goes with being in these roles and having these careers. And that is the part that people don't see. Dispatchers have to speak to people on their worst day, and they have to help them through it, no matter what the situation, whether it be parents, children, victims, witnesses. Sometimes they're the last voice someone ever hears. Let that sink in. That kind of responsibility doesn't disappear when the shift ends. Just like police officers, firefighters, EMTs, and military members, dispatchers carry things home. Even if nobody else can see it, it's there. And more often than not, they have to take care of themselves just like anybody else from those emergency response organizations and the military. And they might have to go seek mental health professionals just to get through something that they're carrying. So it happens. So looking ahead, the future has never been more bright. 911 is still evolving. There's text to 911, video calling, photo uploads, automatic crash notifications, and of course, who can forget AI, right? I'm sure that'll be the next generation in 911. The technology just keeps changing. And actually, we're ahead of it, more so than we ever have been since that fateful day in the 60s. But one thing hasn't changed since that first call in Alabama. When someone needs help, a calm voice answers. And so I leave you with this. The next time you dial 911, remember, before the sirens, before the flashing lights, before police, and before firefighters and EMTs show up, there's someone sitting behind a headset, ready to help. And in the next episode, I'm sitting down with somebody who spent years doing exactly that. My cousin served as a dispatcher for DUCOM, which is located in DuPage County, Illinois. And we'll go behind the headset and talk about what this job is really like from someone who's lived it. I'm Chris. This is All In Always. We'll see you next time. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this episode brought back memories, taught you something new, or reminded you of someone who served, I'd appreciate it if you share it with them. If you're enjoying the podcast, be sure to follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, leave a comment, and let me know what part of today's story resonated with you. I read every comment, and many of them inspire future episodes. You can also find me at notabystander.com, where every purchase helps support the first responder community and the missions behind the podcast. Until next time, I'm Chris Garcia. Take care of each other. Never stop serving those around you. And remember, be all in always.